I'm pushing an elephant up the stairs. I'm tossing out punchlines that were never there. Over my shoulder.
I like the idea of taking a song and breaking it down and looking at it from a different perspective.
I'm breaking through, I'm bending spoons, I'm keeping flowers in full bloom. I'm looking for answers from the great, answers from the great, answers.
Find a different perspective at BBC Radio 2.
This is BBC One in the Midlands. Now the news at 10 o'clock with George Alagaya and Suzanne Verdi.
Israel may go it alone. Ariel Sharon says he has his own peace plan. He tells Palestinians to end violence now or lose more land within months. We'll be asking where that leaves the US-backed roadmap to peace, also tonight. Britain's anti-terror laws under attack. MPs fear miscarriages of justice. Ian Huntley's other child victims. Did police systems fail them too? And a special report on the Guatemalan gangs who kill women for sport. A murder every 2 days.
And here in the Midlands tonight, one of the region's premier football clubs is set to change hands. And it's a counterfeit Christmas. The crooks cashing in on designer names.
Good evening. The Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon has issued an ultimatum to Palestinians: end terrorism within months or face a unilaterally imposed solution to the conflict. Speaking this evening, he said Palestinians would end up with less land than they'd get under the US-backed roadmap. The Palestinian leader Ahmed Kurey called the comments a threat, while the White House says it would oppose any unilateral action. Here's James Reynolds.
1,000 days in office. Until now, little clue of Ariel Sharon's idea of an endgame. But tonight in Tel Aviv, for the first time, Israel's Prime Minister revealed that he had a plan.
If in a few months the Palestinians continue disregarding their part in implementing the roadmap, then Israel will initiate the unilateral security step of disengagement from the Palestinians.
In other words, Mr. Sharon told his audience, Israel may go ahead and draw up its own temporary border with the Palestinians. That means that Jewish settlements like this one, Netzarim in the Gaza Strip, may have to go. Ariel Sharon spent more than a quarter of a century building up places like this. He once told these people to move in. Now he may tell them to move out, to their disgust.
By evacuating Netzarim, it'll only be giving into the terror. It'll only make more terror. I don't think that giving up and giving in is going to lessen the bloodshed at all.
But tonight, Ariel Sharon's taking a different course. He's promised to speed up the construction of Israel's security fence inside the West Bank. And he's made it clear, if the Palestinians don't work with him, he may pick out what he wants for Israel, leaving them with the leftovers.
I am disappointed. I was expecting that something new, but I want to confirm, reiterate our position. We are committed to the roadmap.
But for Ariel Sharon, those words are no longer enough. He's now set out his own terms and his own timetable. If the Palestinians don't go along with him, he'll rearrange the landscape of the West Bank and Gaza by himself.
And James Reynolds is in Jerusalem. James, the United States has already says it opposes unilateral action. So what's Ariel Sharon's calculation, do you think?
Effectively, George, he thinks that in the end, Israel and America will still be on one side and the Palestinians will be on the other side. Verbal criticism doesn't matter that much to Ariel Sharon. He doesn't think that the United States will come here and stop him from trying to do what he's going to do. And he believes, crucially, I think, that the White House shares his exasperation with Yasser Arafat's Palestinian Authority, which is why he believes he can go ahead and do what he wants to do.
And why has Ariel Sharon done this now, at this particular time?
Effectively, because in recent months, everyone else has had a peace plan but him. There have been so many other efforts that people have simply been turning him and saying, where's your plan? And he was losing popularity because he didn't have a plan. So tonight, he's effectively told his electorate, I've got a plan, I know what I'm doing, trust me.
James, thank you. Ministers have been urged to abolish a law which allows foreign terrorist suspects to be imprisoned indefinitely without charge. A committee of senior MPs and peers has warned that the law is unjust. Our chief political correspondent, Mark Mardell, is in Downing Street. Mark.
This committee was set up quite deliberately, quite specifically, as a safeguard, as a concession, because this legislation was rather rushed through Parliament after the September the 11th attacks. Nevertheless, the government is making it quite clear it is going to ignore its main recommendation. The pictures of these suspected al-Qaeda supporters held without trial in Guantanamo Bay have provoked controversy right round the world. It's less well known that 14 foreign suspected terrorists are locked up inside this British prison for an indefinite time without the possibility of a trial. 6 of the men being held in South London's Belmarsh jail have already been here for 2 years, although all of them could leave if they could find a country to take them, and this law doesn't apply to British citizens. A powerful committee of senior politicians, appointed by the Home Office to review the new anti-terrorism laws, wants this part of it to be scrapped.
There are reasons of principle, there are reasons of effectiveness, there are reasons of practicality, including the delays, for example, entailed. We think, therefore, that it is a matter of urgency to identify what we believe would be a better alternative.
The committee says wherever possible, suspects should be charged and go to court. If not, they could be released and supervised by electronic tagging and curfews and by limiting and monitoring their phone calls and bank accounts. This is one of the men in Belmarsh. Abu Qatada is a cleric who the government says gave spiritual advice and encouragement to al-Qaeda terrorists. He denies any connection. If he went back to Jordan, he'd go to prison for life. Human rights groups say Britain is setting a bad example.
It is quite shocking to see one of the leading democracies of the world, the British government, lock people up without charges, no trials in prospect. They don't know why they're there, no end in sight, their lawyers not having access to any of the evidence.
With security very high, the threat of terrorism very real, the government says abandoning this policy would be failing the public.
Where we can prosecute people, where we can put the evidence in open court, we do so. But for the small, tiny minority of cases where we cannot put that evidence in court because it would jeopardise sources, as I say, there's no easy alternative.
The government also says locking up suspects puts off potential terrorists from coming to Britain. Now, those close to David Blunkett say he does accept that this law is drastic, their words, and they say every time he signs a detention order, it is with a heavy heart, but they say there's no workable, no viable alternative. Whether MPs agree with that, we'll see early in the new year when they debate this report.
Mark, thank you. A sick monster was how one of Ian Huntley's underage victims, Janine Oliver, described the Soham murderer today. She's one of a string of women who've now come forward to say they too were targeted by Huntley. Their revelations come as the Home Office said it wants to see greatly improved record-keeping by the police. Margaret Gilmore reports.
Janine Oliver was one of Ian Huntley's underage victims. She lost her virginity to him when she was 14.
He persuaded me that that was the time. All my friends was doing it. I was the odd one out. And the best way to do it was while under the influence of drink, because I wouldn't be as bothered. I'd have Dutch courage, his words were. So that's how it resulted in me sleeping with him.
Janine lived with him for a year. She's horrified at what he's done.
He's just a sick monster, he really is. I can't believe how bad he's been.
Today, the women he abused have been telling their stories. At least 10 times, Humberside police deleted similar allegations against Huntley from their files. The chief constable said he had to wipe the information by law, but this was repeatedly questioned by the BBC presenter Jeremy Paxman.
Well, what do you mean there isn't another answer?
I've given that information once already. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Well, hang on a second.
David Westwood said the Data Protection Act forced them to delete the allegations, but ministers insist violent or sexual accusations can be kept indefinitely.
Information should not be kept for any longer than is necessary, and that therefore requires forces, as it does all of us, to exercise a degree of judgment and professionalism.
If someone's convicted of a crime, it's recorded on the police national computer for all 43 forces in England and Wales to see. With soft intelligence, where someone like Huntley's investigated but not convicted, the information goes into each individual force's intelligence computer. The time each force keeps this intelligence varies hugely. Humberside wiped intelligence on Huntley after a month. Most forces keep it at least a year, and some, like North Yorkshire, keep soft intelligence indefinitely. The problem for the police is the Data Protection Act doesn't specify how long intelligence should be kept before it's deleted.
There's a very fine balance here that we're looking at between the duty of the police service to protect the public and the duty of the police service to also look after the rights of individuals in terms of data protection and human rights. And those two aspects do come into tension sometimes.
There's no doubt when women are abused in future, more information will be kept. The whole system for storing intelligence is being reviewed to try and prevent tragedies like the deaths of Holly and Jessica happening to others. Margaret Gilmore, BBC News.
So for now, the focus is firmly on Humberside, but there are new fears tonight that more people like Huntley could slip through the net. A confidential Home Office report obtained by the BBC warns that offenders could still pass through police checks because of fundamental flaws with the national system of vetting. James Westhead has more details.
Let's do the next question now.
Everyone who works with children, like maths teacher Nirmala Murugan, has to be cleared by the Criminal Records Bureau. Her check has just come through and shows she has no criminal past. Her head teacher had no doubts about her, but he is now wondering whether the checks themselves are worth the paper they're printed on.
I'm worried. I can't make a judgment as to how worried because I'm really in the never land here. I don't know how good the checks are, but it's the sort of worry that keeps you awake at night.
Ministers were so worried by the Soham case they ordered a review of criminal record checks. The report, obtained by the BBC, warns police are failing to enter crucial information to their national computer on time. Arrests should be in within 24 hours. Instead, the average delay is 9 days. Convictions should be entered within 7 days. Instead, it takes 50. As a result, the report warns there's the potential for known offenders to be overlooked during Criminal Record Bureau checks. It can mean serious errors, as probation officers found when they double-checked CRB data.
I asked staff in 2 courts in the London area to see if they could spot any errors, and they found a dozen in a very short period of time, including convictions for domestic violence that were omitted, arson, robbery, and some sexual offences.
For schools or anyone working with children, today's report is deeply worrying. If they can no longer rely 100% on CRB checks, can they rely on their staff? James Westhead, BBC News.
Professor Sir Roy Meadow, the doctor who gave evidence in a number of cases against women accused of killing their babies, is to be questioned by the General Medical Council. The GMC said Professor Meadow was facing allegations which, if proved, would raise a question of serious professional misconduct. He was an expert witness in the trial of Angela Cannings, freed last week after being cleared of murdering her 2 baby sons. He'd also given evidence in the trials of Tripti Patel and of solicitor Sally Clark. Both were later cleared of murder. 1 woman killed on average every 2 days for the last 3 years and hardly any convictions. That grim record comes from the Central American country of Guatemala, where since 2001 more than 700 women and young girls have been brutally murdered. Most of the killings have taken place in the capital, Guatemala City. Matt Fry has been there. You may find some of the pictures in his report upsetting.
Night descends quickly on a land of beguiling beauty. The Virgin Mary is paraded through the streets of Guatemala City. Today they're celebrating the Immaculate Conception. It's a glorious spectacle and a brief distraction from the fear that stalks the young women of this country. This is how Rosa would like to remember her only daughter and Jose, his sister. But their thoughts keep returning to the brutality with which Maria was murdered at the age of 15.
La violaron. La estrangularon.
They raped her and strangled her. She also had a stab wound in the stomach here. They had broken her left leg and her nails were bent back as if she had been fighting with someone.
Everyone was too afraid to be filmed at home, so we met in their psychologist's office. Next, Ilyana and Maria, desperate to talk to us because few were listening. They also brought a picture.
Our sister Nancy was stabbed 48 times in the back, 6 times in the face. They slit her throat. She was beaten and her head was extremely swollen from the blows.
Every time a body is found, the police film the crime scene. There are more than 700 films in this archive of horrors, one for each victim. The authorities are overwhelmed. This is the waiting room outside one public prosecutor's office. Here alone, they're handling 40 cases of murdered women. So far, there have been no convictions. We can't get the witnesses to testify in court, the assistant district attorney told me. People are too terrified. So who's behind this killing spree? We went with the police to an area called Zone 18. It is here that many of the murders have taken place. The police only come in groups of at least 15, and they don't come often. We stop and they set up a roadblock, pulling men off the commuter buses. Many people here are armed. At least this man had a license for his gun. But what the police are really looking for are tattoos. They're a sign that someone belongs to one of the infamous marras or gangs. It is the gangs who are suspected of killing the women, sometimes as an initiation ceremony. 8:30 and the streets are still full, but not for long. The police come and go quickly, Alma told me. It makes no difference. At night, I only go out for real emergencies. One woman viciously murdered on average every 2 days for the last 3 years, and hardly any suspects. It is an astonishing fact, and it explains why the streets of the capital are virtually deserted at only 9 o'clock in the evening. Guatemala City feels like a ghost town at night, and the women here are prisoners in their own homes. No one feels more like a prisoner than this woman playing with her 7-month-old son. She's one of the very few who've gone into a witness protection program after she saw the people who did this to a friend of hers. The killers said they would find me, she told me, and kill me if I spoke to the police. They showed me a severed ear and pointed a gun at my son's head. Violence against women is not new in Central America, but the scale of these crimes is an epidemic of brutality, virtually unpunished here and almost unnoticed outside. Matt Fry, BBC News, Guatemala.
Still to come on tonight's programme, the pop star Michael Jackson, arrested last month, is charged with 7 counts of child molestation. And fishing boats out of water, the graveyard for Britain's trawler fleet. America's top commander in Iraq confirmed today that the documents found with Saddam Hussein last weekend had led to the capture of many more Iraqis resisting American rule. General John Abizaid said Saddam's capture was a huge psychological blow. Saddam was found in the area where he could still rely on most loyalty, a village near his hometown of Tikrit. From there, our World Affairs editor John Simpson reports.
Saddam Hussein loved Tikrit. It was his town, these were his people, and his portraits used to be everywhere. Now, though, it's the Americans who ride through the streets in style. You'd expect it to be a cauldron of violence, but tough, intelligent policing has kept it moderately quiet. Behind the defences at the local government headquarters, the head of security has ordered a curfew lasting till 11 o'clock this morning. He hasn't been home since Saddam was captured. Keeping Tikrit peaceful is a 24-hour-a-day job.
Is it possible that there are supporters of Saddam Hussein even in this very building?
Yes, I certainly can't rule that out, he says. Yet instead of weeding out Saddam's people, the new administration's trying to win them over. Here, the tribal leaders are all important, and with Saddam out of the equation, they're beginning to come round to the new order. Still, the old order lingers on. Inside Tikrit prison, we found the cells full of angry, despairing prisoners, sentenced by a crony of Saddam's. Worse, this 10-year-old boy was locked up with them. Amir Hussein Hadi's crime was stripping roofs to help his family. In the next cell, another 10-year-old, Ali Jabur, caught selling adulterated sugar. Plenty of things here are crying out for real reform. Today, a new picture of Saddam was published, showing how broken he now is. We went to see the place outside Tikrit where he'd been captured. The hole in the ground is now completely uncovered, but everything else remains, even the clothes he wore on his last night of freedom.
Size 48.
What you don't really understand until you come here is how tiny this place is. Just this little courtyard and this small hole in the ground. Very small indeed for a man with a 48-inch chest. It's extraordinary how Saddam Hussein's world shrank into this tiny area.
Not far away is the cemetery with the anonymous graves of Saddam's sons, Uday and Qusay. If he's executed, this is probably where he'll be buried. It's hard to think of a more desolate spot. John Simpson, BBC News, Tikrit.
Here, inquests into the deaths of Princess Diana and Dodi Fayed will open on the 6th of January. They'll be the first official British hearings into the circumstances surrounding their deaths in a car crash more than 6 years ago. The singer Michael Jackson was formally charged tonight with child sex abuse. Within the last hour, prosecutors said that he had been charged with 7 counts of child molestation. Mr. Jackson says the allegations against him are a big lie. Our correspondent, Robert Nisbet, is outside the courthouse in Santa Maria in California. Robert, you've seen the details of these charges. What are they?
Well, as you say, 7 counts of child molestation. Each charge reads a felony was committed by Michael Joe Jackson, who did willfully, unlawfully and lewdly commit a lewd and lascivious act upon a child under the age of 14 years. There are 2 other counts of administering intoxicating liquor to a minor with the intent of committing a felony. Now, the seriousness of the legal problems now facing Michael Jackson can be found at the end of this document handed out to reporters. It says, as to counts 1 through 7, it is further alleged that the victim in the above offence was under the age of 14 years and Michael Joe Jackson had substantial sexual conduct with John Doe.
So, Robert, what happens next?
Well, the legal process is now underway. There'll be an arraignment hearing on January the 16th. Now, that is what we call in Britain an upper and a downer. Michael Jackson will appear. The charges will be read. He may or may not plea. After that, there'll be preliminary hearings to determine whether there is enough evidence to progress to trial. And in terms of the time frame, that could be a matter of weeks. It could be as long as a year. George.
Robert, thank you. A teenager has been found guilty of the murder in the American state of Virginia for his part in the Washington sniper attacks. Lee Boyd Malvo was 17 years old when he and another man killed 10 people in a series of shootings. He could face the death penalty. Last month, his 42-year-old accomplice, John Allen Muhammad, was also found guilty of murder. The footballer Rio Ferdinand has appeared before an FA disciplinary hearing in Bolton, charged with misconduct. The Manchester United and England player failed to take a drugs test in September. He could be banned for up to 2 years if found guilty. The hearing concludes tomorrow. It's a Christmas tradition. Europe's fishery ministers locked away to talk about cutting the number of fish caught. The tough restrictions to preserve dwindling fish numbers have forced many trawlermen out of the industry. Britain's fishing fleet has declined dramatically over the past 10 years. In 1991, there were nearly 11,000 fishing vessels. 10 years later, a third of the fleet had gone. Andrew Castle has the extraordinary story of what happens to the fishing boats when they pull up their nets for the last time. He reports from the Danish port of Grenaa.
A shipbreaker's yard in Denmark. The last of 30 Scottish vessels are being hauled ashore to be scrapped. This is what the EU calls decommissioning, taking vessels out of the fleet to reduce the number catching fish and so save the dwindling stocks. Once ashore, nothing is spared. Even the clothing and equipment used by their crews disappears. In the space of 2 days, a 120-ton vessel reduced to a pile of scrap metal and trash.
This is a sight which is bound to break a skipper's heart, but it's going to happen more and more often in the years ahead as British fishermen are encouraged to leave the industry in an effort to save the fish stocks.
Paul Stewart has brought his boat, the Poseidon, to Greenow to be decommissioned. He was forced to do so by the bank. He'll get the best part of £1 million from the government, but he told me he'll not see any of it. The cash will go towards paying off his creditors.
I'm going to a friend's funeral. This is like going to a funeral for me today. This is my life's work's lying here, going to be cut up. The boat's 9 years old. There's 20, 30 years work, good work and life left in this vessel, yet it's going to be ripped to pieces.
Soon the Poseidon's wheelhouse will join the hundreds already salvaged. This is a maritime supermarket. Everything here is up for sale. We found a party of Thai fishermen scouring the yard for equipment to update their own fleets.
They allow us to take only the equipment, not the whole vessel here, and that's why we come to looking for the equipment which is suitable for us here.
The firm buying up the Scottish boat says most of the vessels it's destroying were built less than a decade ago. Some are just 3 years old.
That's criminal, because they could have been used some other places in the world.
Tonight, another Scottish boat was being taken apart. The metal from her hull will be recycled, smelted down for the German car industry. Andrew Castle, BBC News, Greenow, Denmark.
And we'll be back a little later with the latest on the day's headlines, but now it's time to join our news teams across the UK.
Good evening, I'm Suzanne Verdi. First tonight, some breaking football news. Wolverhampton Wanderers are due to announce their new owners tomorrow. The Premiership's bottom club were put up for sale earlier in the season by owner Sir Jack Hayward, but there had appeared to be little interest. John Bray has this exclusive report. I'm sorry we don't seem to have that report at the moment. We'll try to return to it a little later in the bulletin. Fake CDs and DVD films with a street value of £1 million have been discovered by trading standards officers. It seems 2003 could end up being one of the busiest years on record for counterfeit crime. Robin Punt reports.
Over 70,000 illegal discs recovered at a car boot sale in Cannock. Staffordshire trading standards officers say many were poor quality, but the real thing cost £16. These usually sell for £3.
It's easy to do. Technology's moved on apace and can be done at home.
I have been in trading standards for over 30 years, and this year is as bad as any I've seen.
In Birmingham, John Martin looks at a copy of the latest designer purses, but as in Staffordshire, it's CDs and films that are big illegal hits this Christmas. These seized computers can copy 20 discs an hour, fakes of latest cinema releases.
Well, we usually find them within a matter of 2-3 days of their release.
So the premiere is one day, and then 2 days later you get the fake DVD?
That's right.
Just this morning, trading standards officers based near Birmingham Airport carried out a raid on a home in Moseley. And there they appear to have discovered yet another counterfeiting factory selling its goods on the internet. Most shoppers say they wouldn't buy fakes, but judging by latest seizures, it seems our appetite for counterfeit goods is growing. Robin Punt, BBC Midlands Today, Birmingham.
Well, we can return to our top story now, and news that Wolverhampton Wanderers will announce their new owners tomorrow.
In September, Sir Jack Hayward said he would give Wolves away for nothing. But even that deal wasn't appetising enough for potential investors. Sir Jack then suggested a fortnight ago that he would want any new owner to pump in around £40 million into the Molineux club. Stuck at the foot of the Premiership, Wolves now face a real scrap to avoid an immediate return to the First Division. But fans will hope that tomorrow's expected announcement will release sufficient funds for manager Dave Jones to strengthen his squad in January. Sir Jack, who's 80, took over as chairman from his son Jonathan, and there are rumours tonight that his other son, Rick, may feature in any takeover. Sir Jack took control of Wolves in 1990 and financed a complete redevelopment of Molineux, and he finally saw his club end a 19-year wait for a return to top-flight football with playoff success in May. John Bray, BBC Midlands Today, Wolverhampton.
Big changes in the way out-of-hours and overnight health visits are handled have been unveiled. Home visits previously carried out by GPs will now be dealt with by a call centre for people in most parts of the region. Patrick Burns reports.
With Christmas comes the biggest test, so the health minister's here to open the centre and to make sure they're up to it.
Kids get ill, older folk get ill, we all sometimes get poorly over that Christmas time, and we want the confidence and knowledge that if we ring someone's going to come around and see us.
It's cost £3 million, serves 4.5 million people and expects to deal with 150,000 calls this Christmas.
Call centres everywhere, insurance, banking, now inevitably, I suppose, healthcare. But it's a bit impersonal, isn't it? I mean, whatever happened to the family doctor?
The important thing for patients is that when they're ill, they need the right care at the right time with the right person. No doctor should have to work 168 hours a week. We believe that this facility will enable people to speak to a doctor or nurse promptly, who can then arrange the appropriate care.
Non-emergency calls are assessed, either for advice by phone or a visit by a GP or nursing practitioner within an hour if need be. Some health professionals are concerned they may struggle to keep to their budgets.
If they can't, then they're going to have to get funds from other sources. It's really a question of robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Briefed via his data link, another doctor prepares to hit the road. New contracts allow GPs to opt out of out-of-hours working, so this increasingly will be the way of home visits. Christmas should show if it works. Patrick Burns, BBC Midlands Today, Birmingham.
Fast food chain McDonald's is revamping its image to revive profits, and the artwork's been done by a firm right here in the Midlands. Mark Foster reports.
After 50 years of growth, sales and profits have slowed for the fast food chain. A new global image under the "I'm loving it" slogan is being introduced into its 30,000 restaurants around the world. By this time next year, this packaging will have been replaced with this. And to give you an idea of the size of the contract, McDonald's get 47 million customers a day. So that adds up to a lot of packaging, 4 billion items a year. And the work's been done by a small design house in Coleshill near Birmingham. The fact that McDonald's is based in Chicago, 6 hours behind the UK, worked to their advantage.
We have a daily conference call at 9 a.m. They will review the work, they will decide what they want to do during that day. They may be presenting work, development work in various meetings. They email us so that when we come into the office the next morning, we've got a 6-hour head start on them.
A big deal for them, but what will it do for the Big Mac?
You can see where it's going from in terms of lifestyle, and that's what McDonald's always been about, lifestyle. You can imagine if that appeared, and these girls across here think it looks pretty good. And I trust more on what they say than what I would say.
It's really nice, actually. It's really snazzy, isn't it? I like the person on the front of the cup. It just it gives you more to look at when you're buying your drink. It's really nice.
For the design company, it's a huge coup, one which will put them on the map and put a new look in restaurants around the world. Mark Foster, BBC Midlands Today, Coleshill.
Well, that's it from the late team. Now it's back to George Alagaya in London. Have a very good evening. Bye-bye.
And the main news tonight, the Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon has warned Palestinians to end terrorism within months or face an Israeli-imposed settlement to the conflict. He said that if Israel did impose a solution, Palestinians could end up losing land. And senior MPs have warned ministers that anti-terrorist laws could lead to miscarriages of justice. Newsnight is getting underway over on BBC Two, but from all of us on the 10 o'clock team, good night.
Good evening too. Join me later tonight for the skiing forecast. This is something we do every Thursday throughout the season. Tonight it's at about 10 to 2, and actually we might incidentally be skiing in this country over the weekend because we are in for a spell of very wintry weather Sunday through into Monday, more particularly eastern parts of England and the north and east of Scotland. For the reason, well, we've got an area of low pressure getting its act together across there on the continent, and as it moves away, so it's going to suck down those very cold, bitterly cold northerly winds right the way from the Arctic. Winds are fairly benign at the moment. In fact, there's hardly any wind at all, but they will begin to pick up before long, first of all from the northwest, then as you see over the weekend from the north. But that northerly blast doesn't last all that long. And as we head into next week and towards the Christmas period, they go back into a milder southwesterly direction. Now tonight we've got a different problem with light winds and broken cloud. We have some patchy fog across England and Wales. We also have some frost, so watch out for those icy patches to go with it. It's a different story for Scotland and Northern Ireland, a band of cloud bringing a few spots of rain southwards, although coming along behind it with clearing skies, again we could well get a touch of frost and some patches of fog, and as you see the temperatures will be below freezing further south. That means to say for England and Wales tomorrow, starting off grey, murky and misty, that fog around, most of it probably by that time up on the hilltops, but even so it's going to be a misty, murky day, and there might be the odd sort of bright interval in eastern areas, but on the other hand the cloud thickening up all the while, perhaps enough to give 1 or 2 spots of rain before the day's out. A different story for much of Northern Ireland, northernmost parts of England and Scotland, where apart from a few showers in the north of Scotland, it should be dry, bright and reasonably sunny. It is going to be a bit on the chilly side in some eastern areas, especially where it stays grey and murky all day. And then things begin to happen on Saturday. Quite a lot of rain around for many parts of the country, I think. And we're also going to find some blustery showers coming into Scotland. And as time goes on, those showers will become heavier and more wintry. And then, of course, Sunday, well, this is the day of the fun and games. I think we're going to find some wintry showers. That means snow and sleet, first of all affecting northern areas, running right the way down this eastern side of the country during the course of the day. We could also get some coming into Northern Ireland and into the Irish Sea and to North Wales as well. But more sheltered areas should get away with a dry day with some sunshine, although, of course, everywhere it will be bitterly cold in that strong wind. The wind begins to ease on Monday, as do the showers, just 1 or 2 left in the southeastern corner. But then on the other hand, in northwestern parts, we're going to have some rain preceded by some sleet or snow.
Only Fools and Horses. Christmas specials continue Saturday at 9:25 on BBC One.
The Christmas double issue of Radio Times contains all details of forthcoming BBC programmes, together with complete listings for all major free-to-air and other television channels for the festive season.
In which round of Wimbledon was the men's defending champion Leighton Hewitt knocked out? A. Semi-finals, B. quarter-finals, C. third, D. first. There is an easier way of testing your general knowledge this Christmas. Play at home, on paper, online, with your digital remote or by text. Test the Nation, the 2003 test. Monday at 8:30 on BBC One.
A look at how spoken English language has changed and what it means for the future. Blimey is on BBC 4 at 11:25. But right now on BBC One, the history of the greatest book in the English language.